Hello everybody, it's Sylvie. Welcome back. I hope you're doing good. I sound like I am in such a good mood and I'm not quite sure why, but hey, let's talk tarot. So today I wanted to chat about the different kinds of tarot readings that I do for myself. Like not spreads exactly, but a more like nebulous kind of types of readings. And the different decks or the different types of decks that I use for them. So what brought this about is that I recently-ish have started doing some week-long readings for myself where I pull a few cards every few days to like add to a larger reading and think about throughout the week. I've been using the Way Home tarot for this, and I realised it works really well for this kind of reading and that it clicks better for me than when I've used it in other spreads in other readings in the past. And this all got me thinking about the different kinds of readings that I do and like how different decks have different strengths and what I'm looking for in each kind of reading and like what I want from the cards that I'm using. So in a way, this is kind of how I categorize my decks. There are other ways. I love categories. I love to classify. I love to sort. I love to organize. This is just one of those ways. And I've just realized that what I am essentially doing is, once again, trying to quantify something that is not necessarily quantifiable. Thus is the story of my life. And yeah, I just kind of got to thinking about all this and I just was really interested in my own thoughts, I guess, which sounds obnoxious, but hey. But yeah, I've never deliberately thought about my practice or like my collection in this way, like how I relate to different decks, how different imagery can like not just bring different interpretations to the forefront, but it actually triggers a different kind of reading experience, if that makes sense. And yeah, I just thought this was really interesting. So hopefully you will think so too. And I would also love to hear like other perspectives on this because this is a kind of like functional, practical overview of tarot. And I think it's really interesting and I'd love to hear how other people kind of interact with it. So yes. So I'm going to start by talking about my daily single card pull because I've talked about this before. I've got a whole video on it. Yeah, I use a different deck each month to get to know a deck. This is my deck for May. This is Midnight Magic. And I make a note of the cards that I pull each day in my journal and like take a couple of quick notes on the card that I pull every day. So my daily pull decks, the kind of criteria for them is that they are Rider-Waite-Smith based in meaning and also that they have some kind of strong sense of like world building or theming. So this obviously is a mushroom deck and you can see they've chosen a different mushroom for each card. And then in the guidebook, it goes into why each one was chosen. I also like to use the Llewellyn boxed decks for this. This is the Darkwood Tarot. This was this my February? Yeah, this was my February or my March. No, this was my March deck. And these are great because they come with like a whole guidebook. There's a lot written about each card and they tend to also be quite like heavily themed. So this is like shadow worky, dark fairy tale kind of vibes, witchy stuff. So yeah, these are the kind of decks that I pick for my daily draw. My daily draw is also more of a study of a deck rather than like a tarot reading, I guess. So my other kind of everyday reading, not in terms of every single day, but like kind of run-of-the-mill type of reading every day in that sense is a 2-card or sometimes like a 3-card draw. And like what I do is I pull 2 cards and the kind of positions as it were is just literally more of this, less of that. So I pull 2 cards, more of this, less of that. Sometimes it's 3 and I add a 3rd one for like something to either be cautious about or like just be extra aware of. these are like quick pulls for like a quick dash of insight. So like in this example, I read these two like as a pair. So more of this, less of that. I would say more of the rebirth element and less of this idea of like enduring legacy. And then the thing to be like extra aware of, I think in this context, would be the transformative aspect of the magician with this idea of like rebirth. So that would be my like, and that's literally all that I put into this reading. It's a very quick like, okay, more of this, less of that, something to take note of or something to be like aware of. And then that's it, and I'm done. And it is a very like, I don't bother journaling these or writing them down. It's just like, oh, I want to pull some cards and like see what they have to say. And it's a very like quick, I guess, like intuition based reading. And this is where my Rider-Waite-Smith, and as you can see from this is the Black Light Tarot from Tarot Collectibles. This is where my Rider-Waite-Smith clones come in really handy. So something like this, any of my Tarot Collectibles decks, also my much loved Tarot Volatile, which does have some extra symbolism and like alchemy involved, but is a fairly standard like Rider-Waite-Smith based system. The Lifelines Tarot, also something like the Art of Adventure, because although this also has some like different imagery in terms of meanings, it's like pretty standard Rider-Waite-Smith. So that's my like kind of everyday deck. And this practice of like my two more of this, less of that kind of card reading is my most long-standing and my most consistent practice. So this came from trying to do a single card pull like as a reading for myself every day, as opposed to the way I do it now, which is more like studying a deck, because I find if I'm only drawing one card for the day, it actually is a little bit overwhelming. I find it difficult to kind of grasp anything meaningful from like just one card without any kind of like parameters on it almost, because every card in the tarot contains like so many layers of meaning and possible interpretations that like pulling just a single card and trying to read it on its own and trying to like make that meaningful for, especially in a more predictive sense, it's just, I feel like it's kind of like the aces in a sense that there's just like too much potential in there and it's hard to like grasp meaning from it. And when I'm doing like this kind of quick reading, I want to spend like 2 minutes with my card and that's it. I don't want to be like journaling for hours about like what it could possibly mean. So if I'm drawing two cards together and like reading them as a pair, it lets me like, it gives some boundaries to the reading and it lets me like mentally like bounce between the two. So instead of just like sending my intuition out into the void of one card, I've got some like limits, and I don't know, it's just easier to read. It's more like practical as like a quick reading for me. So that is my daily style reading, my kind of quick draw, quick meaning, quick intuitive hit, and that is what I like my Rider-Waite-Smith based decks for. They're fairly straightforward. There's not a whole lot of extra symbolism to get tied up in. I don't need to go hunting through a guidebook to like translate meaning. I can just see what I'm seeing and be done. As mentioned, I've also started doing a week-long reading. Like I say, I pull a few cards every few days. So this is the Way Home Tarot, and this is the only deck that I've done this with so far. And I've been really liking this because this is such like an uncluttered, like spacious deck. It's been really good for this like slower style of reading, because I'm giving myself like days to think about the cards and think about how they kind of come together. It's a good one to just kind of like get lost in a way. And I've been really enjoying it. I don't know what else I have that would fit this kind of category of like uncluttered. I don't want to say empty because they're not empty, but they're not very upfront with their meanings. Like you get this scene, you get this like depiction. This isn't even a scene, you know, you get like you just get the artist's interpretation and you have to like make meaning from it rather than like reading loads of symbols directly on the card, like telling you what it's supposed to mean. There's definitely a word for that that is not coming to mind, but I don't know if I have anything else that fits into this kind of category. I think perhaps I think potentially the Herb Crafter's Tarot, I could say, is maybe like a similar kind of thing, because it's, again, it's not obvious with its meaning and how you're supposed to interpret it, but I would need to reach for the guidebook for this one, because it's not like Rider-Waite-Smith based. But that's not a bad thing necessarily. So maybe I will switch the Way Home out for the Herb Crafters next week and see how I get on with it. But yeah, so I think they're both like quite, like this is Rider-Waite-Smith based, and a lot of the images do kind of reference Rider-Waite-Smith. Is that true? I've just said that. I don't know if that's true, or if just the meanings make sense in my brain. I think I've completely made that up. Yeah, so in terms of the meanings anyway, it's Rider-Waite-Smith based. So yeah, these kind of like, I guess they're both more intuitive decks is basically what I'm trying to say. So another kind of reading that is quite new to me is reading Oracle together with Tarot. I have spoken before about my struggles with Oracle decks, and I've actually spoken about these two specifically in my Taurus season wrap-up. So this is the Grimalkin's Curious Cats Tarot and the Urban Crow Oracle, both by MJ Cullinane. These are the Hay House mass market editions. But I'll tell you again in case you missed that video. So what I've been doing with these primarily is taking the Oracle first and pulling like 2 or 3 cards, kind of in the same way I do my daily draw style. So they don't really have like set positions. It'll either be like more of this, less of that, something to consider, or sometimes I just pull 3 and see what they have to say in conversation with each other. So actually more curiosity, less anticipation is interesting, because instinctively I feel like they're similar, which doesn't make any sense when you think about the definitions of the word, because I feel like curiosity and anticipation are like not the same thing, but to me they feel similar because they both have like undepressed energies about them. But I guess this is more active and this is more passive, so that would be what I take from that. And then considering growth, so I guess it would be seeking out things that are like sustaining. Anyway, so I do my little 3-card pull. Okay, so it was a little bit difficult to get them all on in frame, but yeah, so I pulled my 3 Oracle cards, and then I pull 3 Tarot, and the Tarot card is like the sort of direction for the Oracle. Does that make sense? So like the message of the Tarot card is how I would view the Oracle card. So I'm saying like more curiosity, less anticipation, and I'm taking that as like more active rather than passive and like waiting for things to happen, like seek stuff out. And so doing that through the 7 of Pentacles, I would say would be like, well, examine all your options, like assess all your choices. And I think that's quite well supported by the Knight of Pentacles, because although he is a much more like grounded, slow and steady knight than say the Knight of Swords, who is much more about like acting, he's not sitting and waiting for things to happen. He is like in that kind of planning stage. And then, oh, growth and the world go nicely together. I think that's what you're aiming for with the world, is like a well-rounded growth. It's growth in the direction of something to be like completed. And also I think something that's like on a large scale. It's not something that's going to be grown overnight. It is a kind of long-term goal. And I kind of feel like that works with the 7 of Pentacles as well, because the 7 of Pentacles is lots of options. And I feel like that's kind of like a message of you can explore all your options. You just need to do it like steadily, and you need to have like an active role in it. So yeah, I didn't plan on doing like a sample reading. It just kind of happened, but it seemed to make the most sense to explain the way that I do these readings. So like I said, that is another kind of reading that I've been doing, is reading Tarot together with Oracle. And so far, these are the only 2 decks that I've done that with. This is the only pair that I've done that with, because the other oracles that I've got, I do not think are well suited for that. And I've been enjoying this. It's been what's been working. So the final kind of flavor of reading that I do for myself is a larger, more complex spread, going a bit more in depth in any kind of question or topic, and this is where the kind of the weird and the wonderful, or the very symbol heavy, or the very unusual decks really thrive. So like the Labanco Tarot is really great for this, because although it is Rider-Waite-Smith based, there is just something about this deck that is always a little bit special and a little bit like not what I expect. And so it takes me a little bit more time to read. Like to read with this deck, I would struggle to do just like a really straightforward, well, I wouldn't struggle to do a straightforward like 2-card reading with it, but it wouldn't be at its best doing that with it. So it really is best when I like want to spend a lot of time with the deck and like really sit with it and really think about all the different associations, see what I can draw out of this imagery, have a look at the guidebook, like all that good stuff. This I'm not going to unwrap, but this is the Mary L Tarot. That is also really good for when I do want to do like a deep dive, kind of more complex reading, because that's when I want to like really take time, and this deck, both these decks, like deserve that time. There's definitely a place for like Rider-Waite-Smith type decks in these readings as well, but like these are a little bit more indulgent in a way. So yeah, I think that's maybe all I wanted to say on that. This wasn't a super planned out video, I just kind of had the idea and went with it, so I hope it all like made sense. But yeah, this obviously didn't delve into like the additional complexities of what kind of reading I'm doing. Am I doing like inner child or shadow work? How am I feeling? What can I handle from a deck? Like, etc, etc. And none of this is cut and dry. None of this is like strict. I'm always mixing things up, and I believe that there's no shame in occasionally having a reading where I just feel like I'm getting nothing from the deck. Like, it happens. Sometimes it's talking gibberish. Sometimes I feel like it's not talking to me at all. All of that kind of thing. I mean, like, I have days where I feel like I can't get my words out, so it makes sense that my decks have those days too. Right, so like I've said, I think this is interesting. If it doesn't sound too conceited to say that my own thoughts are interesting, but yeah, it's helped me look at my practice and my collection from a more functional perspective, and that's just not something I've done before. So please do let me know your thoughts on like all this as well. Like, do you have different kinds of decks for different kinds of readings? Do you use the same decks as me in different ways? Because I think that's really cool. Or do you just have like workhorse decks and decks that are really versatile? This has also got me thinking about the idea of a workhorse deck, which is something that like most people will say that they have. And I do have decks that I would consider workhorse decks, in the sense that I'll use them across all different kinds of topics. But I think some decks are better suited for like larger spreads than others, or vice versa. But yeah, let me know what you think, even if you like massively disagree with me, because at the end of the day, practice is personal. We're all trying to work out what works for us. We're all different, all that good stuff. So I just think this is all really interesting. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to leave it here. My camera's about to die. You might have noticed I'm talking really quickly. So yeah, thank you very much for watching and for spending some time with me. I hope that you've enjoyed the video. Give me a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.